The world's most comprehensive Cowboy Bebop guidebook 321 Let's Jam has just hit shelves, covering the animation and most of its spin-offs and specials in unprecedented depth. This series of hidden tracks will visually outline some of the new findings and unexplored details contained in its pages, and bring to light a few exclusive points besides. Old-school music fans know that hidden tracks come in many forms, but for this first one, let's start at the beginning, and the end, too. Investigating the origins of Bebop's protagonist, Spike, and the man that his creator has described as the biggest influence on the character. Yūsaku Matsuda was arguably Japan's biggest screen star in the 70s and 80s. Following successful stints on TV cop shows, he took top billing in a string of action films, playing outlaws, rebels, and those on the margins of society, usually sporting a pair of sunglasses, and rarely short of cigarettes. In the 80s, he moved into more thoughtful territory, but his position as an icon of the country's youth was well and truly secure. The rest of the world, however, wasn't paying much attention to Japanese media at the time, with interest in the works of Kurosawa and Ozu, for example, having long since died down. Consequently, most of Matsuda's output remained little known elsewhere. In fact, it was the prospect of international recognition that drove him to take a key role in Ridley Scott's Black Rain. Despite being diagnosed with cancer shortly before filming began, here he is making friends with Andy Garcia, against Michael Douglas's better judgment. Ultimately, the cancer claimed Matsuda's life within months of production wrapping on the movie, an early stage exit that only solidified his legendary status on home soil. Much of Matsuda's following had been built 10 years earlier, when he had donned a fedora to play chain-smoking freelancer Shunsaku Kudo in NTV's Tantai Monogatari, literally meaning private detective story. Hard-boiled and humorous, poignant and playful, and more than a little bit meta at times. Much of Tantei's style and creative aura would eventually be reflected in director Shinichiro Watanabe's anime work, beginning with Bebop. On screen, the sharpshooting Kudo lived by his own rules, often caught between suspicious policemen on the one hand and dangerous gangs on the other. Behind the scenes, meanwhile, Tantei's team of young creatives celebrated and flaunted their influences, bringing filmic touches to proceedings as scheduling and formats permitted, but also delighting in subverting the tough persona audiences might expect from the protagonist of a crime serial. 15 years later, when Cowboy Bebop's staff began putting together their own opus, this shared frame of reference made it a little easier for them to reach an understanding about the kind of hero Spike would be. As far as Watanabe was concerned, he was to be a character that would have passed muster with Matsuda rather than a parody of the man himself. Nevertheless, character designer Toshihiro Kawamoto patterned the bounty hunter's height and hairstyle on Matsuda's. Chief writer Keiko Nobumoto consciously fleshed out Spike's personality with some of what she felt had made the film star compelling, and voice actor Koichi Yamadera recognized the similarities immediately, helping to inform his performance. So Matsuda and Tantei's influence was more than superficial, but as with many of Bebop's homages, the visual parallels cataloged in 321 Let's Jam can be quite pointed, whether it's the depiction of a shock sign, Spike's choice of props when cooking, or when sleeping. The idea of faking a pregnancy to stash one's ill-gotten gains. or simply the freelancers' high-carb diets. It's clear that staff members at all levels of the anime's production were on the same page. Watanabe acknowledged that the things that make an impression on creators in their youth tend to manifest in their work as adults. Something that might go some way to explaining his casting of Tante guest star Renji Ishibashi in the Cowboy Bebop film. And given that the director could still quote from them decades later, the detective show's idiosyncratic episode previews were probably the main inspiration for Bebop's own.
見ない方がいい、これは。本当。見るなよ。子供は見ない方がいいだろう。女性もよした方がいい。
Matsuda's winter wear in the show was a conscious inspiration for spikes in Jupiter Jazz, while the actor's swan song in cop drama Tayo ni Hoero, directly translating as Howl at the Sun, was also homage to the two-parter, with both characters reacting to being shot by attempting to have a smoke. It worked out better for Spike. Tantei Monogatari's ending, particularly the ambiguity of the protagonist's fate, would remain a topic of debate among viewers even decades after it aired in 1980. And if that sounds familiar, it was something Watanabe actively sought to replicate for a new generation with Bebop. Just for fun, let's examine one possible hint towards that intention. Tante's mini-epilogue subtly suggests that all may not be as it seems, with an umbrella that changes color between shots, from red to blue, up in the top left, and then green. Likewise in Bebop's finale, Julia's reveal on a rainy Martian street is preceded by a fleeting glimpse of 3 umbrellas, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 green. But in trying to measure up to the detective show's legacy, the director also looked beyond Tante for ideas. Matsuda's movie roles often had a harder edge than TV's detective kudo, ranging from anti-heroes to full-on villains. It's a difference comparable to that between regular Spike and trenchcoat Spike, perhaps because other elements of his arc and Bebop's last episodes were informed by Matsuda's work in film. For starters, the series of events that introduces Julia in Session 5 is strikingly reminiscent of the sequence from Oetachi ni Hakaranai, No Grave for Us. Back in Bebop's finale, Faye's last contribution to the show literally mirrors Yutaka Nakajima's in Satsujin Yugi, or The Killing Game. Lastly, what might be Bebop's grandest cinematic homage of all seems to have remained hidden in plain sight for more than 25 years. Yajushi Tsubushi, or The Beast Must Die, was a film that had scarred a young Shinichiro Watanabe, who had come to the cinema expecting a more conventional Matsuda vehicle, and left it haunted by the actor's more opaque turn, as disturbed war photographer Kunihiko Date. The mise-en-scène and ethereal lighting of its climax apparently inspired one of anime's most memorable endings, in substance, impact, and presentation, right down to the fade to white before cutting to black. From start to finish, then, Cowboy Bebop owes a great deal to Yūsaku Matsuda. His unique look, his on-screen persona, but also the maverick quality he embodied. Breaking rules and going against the grain. You can read more about this and other Bebop-related discoveries in 3, 2, 1, Let's Jam from Telos Publishing, and support both Bebop and Matsuda's available films using the links in the description. Stay tuned for more hidden tracks soon.